Exactly. So one of the few things I remember my dad telling me when I was really young, this isn't part of the speech or anything, but he was like, Neale, if you're ever not super sure what to wear, just throw on a pair of khakis. It's not too formal, it's not too casual. And also, as you'll see in the picture, he was always wearing like paint-stained, ripped whatever shirts, and so I have like a shirt with a stain and like a rip on it.
Okay.
Just kind of an ambiance. It was just kind of, you know, his, I don't know, style.
Sure.
So I decided to carry it over. All right, so, good morning.
Good
Thanks for
morning.
taking this time to spend with me. And, all right. So imagine with me, just one moment. You're 13 years old. You're a baseball player, and you're pretty good in your area. You've got a strong pitching arm, but you've also got a good hitting arm as well. That's pretty atypical in baseball when it comes to like pitchers. So you're down by one, there's somebody on base. It's the bottom of the ninth inning. This is your last chance. You're up to bat. No sooner are you hitting that ball than you're getting taps on your head. You just hit the home run to win the game for your team. And no sooner are you hitting that home run, no sooner are you celebrating with your teammates, are you going home to an empty home. You don't have your dad to say, hey, good job, champ. You don't have your mom. Your mom's probably blacked out from all the rum she's been drinking. You don't have anybody to share that celebration, that excitement with. Flash forward a couple years. You're 17 now. You're on third base. You're running home, standard. You're in a slide. You're going to get the point for your team. It's going to be all good. Well, you break your arm. All that hard work, all the years, all the time you spent, that'll be your escape. It's gone. You break your arm, you can never play baseball again. But you have nobody at home to share that sadness with. You have nobody's shoulder to cry into. You're alone, you're isolated. That's just a small glimpse of the life of my dad, Neale Simmons Jr. Now, to keep myself from cringing every time I say Neale Simmons Jr., I'm just going to call him Buddy, because that was the name he was given when he was an adult. So Buddy was born on August 7th, 1958, at Lee Hospital in Norfolk, Virginia, and he was born and grew up in Great Bridge, in the Great Bridge area of Virginia. And trouble started for Buddy at a very young age. When he was 8 years old, his dad was a veteran, and he was diagnosed with PTSD and severe schizophrenia, which are both crippling mental disorders, and his dad was institutionalized when he was 8. And also at 8 years old, his brother, Henry, who is 10 to 15 years older, started sexually and emotionally abusing my dad. And his mom was an alcoholic, and she had such a strong prejudice against men, it was as if my dad didn't really exist to her. His older sister got all the preferential treatment. Whenever my dad would help, they'd be like, who are you? You don't even, you can't do this, you don't know what you're doing. So my dad isolated himself at a very young age. He had nobody to turn to. And following that line, at 14 years old, my uncle introduced my dad, the one who was emotionally and sexually abusing him, introduced him to alcohol and weed. And my dad was like, all right, this is my escape. At that moment, at 14, that was kind of the first domino that fell. And my dad instantly just began putting his problems in alcohol and marijuana. In his own isolation, they were his friends. And so a study from the National Institute of Health says that of older siblings who are doing drugs or alcohol, 70% of them are likely to transfer that habit to their younger sibling. And then also, a study done that was posted on medicaldaily.com or medicinedaily.com, 1,200 people were interviewed with mental health ailments, and 37% of that 1,200 were molested or emotionally, sexually abused by a family member of theirs. So, my dad kept trucking along. He made it through high school somehow, and in 1974 he graduated, and he met my mom. He was about 22 when he met my mom, and my mom was 24, and they hit it off. But my mom said there was always something that was off about my dad, and it was the fact that he was hiding this crippling alcoholism that had started so young. And so they met at a church event. It was kind of funny because this is just kind of to give something about how my dad was. My mom was like, I don't think I'm here to meet my husband. And I guess my dad has something to say about that, because in 1982, they ended up getting married. And he made quick work, and in 89, they had my first sister, Heidi. And then in 1990, they had my middle sister, Ann. And then in 92, they had my youngest sister, Meg. And it's kind of funny, because kind of moving into his adulthood, my dad had a horrible experience when my middle sister was born. And so he was like, you know what, I'm going to become a nurse, because I can do this way better than any of these fools coming in here working with my baby. And so he decided to go to nursing. And he, despite he had alcoholism, and despite this kind of crippling depression, at this point, he's been diagnosed with depression, bipolar, clinical insomnia. Despite all this, his patients and the people he worked with, they love him. My mom said that he had this way of kind of connecting with you one-on-one, where he made you feel like you were the only person in the world that mattered at that moment. So when I was 5 years old, however, the alcoholism kind of kept building up, and my mom and dad split. They were divorced. And at 5 years old, I'm so confused. I'm like, what? Where's dad going, So for the next 3 years, I kind of lived with that. I was like, all right, I get to spend some time with dad alone, spend some time with mom, but I never get to spend them together. And that was so confusing, so hard on my heart. And then I kind of knew there was something wrong. But I was so young, I didn't really, But I guess you could say it came to a T in 2006 on September 4th. My mom's birthday was Labor Day. It was the day before school started. And I remember I was watching Finding Nemo, and I fell asleep, and it was 2 in the morning, and I wake up, my mom's tears down her face. She's shaking me. She's like, Neale, I have something to tell you. I'm like, what's up? She goes, your dad died today. And like instantly, it was kind of weird. To this day, I can't really watch Finding Nemo, but I kind of realized, like, wow, it's kind of like a reverse Nemo. I lost my dad, and I'm hoping he's gonna come back, but I know I'm so young, I'm trying to process things all at once. I'm like, well, all right, I guess I'm Nemo. And so I've kind of front-loaded the front half of this story, this speech, with sadness. There's so much darkness in his life, but at the same time, he somehow was able to connect with people. And so today, the second half, the front half, my story is going to be a story of hope, a story of positivity. So I kind of followed down his path, of course. And in 7th grade, I really felt my first level of betrayal, and really felt my first level of kind of isolation to myself. My close friends did something. I felt really, I felt lost. And somehow, I continued through middle school, and I got to high school, and I don't know how I made it through high school, but I made it through high school. The last 2 years, I pretty much failed out, but I was able to make it to college, and first semester at college, I was smoking weed, and it was like, wow, I could get my hands on just about anything I could. Because dormitories are a toxic place, man. And so I'm getting into these stupid things, and I kind of worked myself into this cycle where I would wake up, I would go to work, and then I would be social. I love people. I love meeting people. That's amazing. People are great. And I loved them then. But then at night, I would go home, I would pull out my bong, I would do whatever I could to just forget myself. Because I hated myself. I didn't know why. And then things kind of kept going like that. You can only go in a cycle like that for so long. But I remember on February 17th, 2017, I kind of hit a boiling point. I was so sick of my life. I was so sick of the life I'd been living. I was so sick of kind of fulfilling this prophecy it seemed like my dad had put before me. I was like, all right. I texted my mom. I was like, all right, I'm heading to bed. Good night. I love you. But in reality, I was in an apartment at this point, and I was stepping up to the windowsill. I was just kind of breathing in the air, and all of a sudden, everything goes dark. And I'm kind of in my mind at this point, and it kind of feels like I was just really shaken up. And I really feel like on that day, February 17, 2017, my dad kind of spoke to me almost. He really touched my heart. He goes, Neale, you're living my life. You're trying to let me continue to live through you, and that has to stop now. You can't, I'm gone, but I don't have to be really gone. And so I wake up and I immediately call my mom. I'm like, Mom, I need to come home. Because I was living this life, I was lying to her. I was taking money she didn't have to go buy a gram of weed so I could get high for the night. Like, I was taking care for my mom. I was so selfish, and I was so focused on myself because I couldn't deal with myself. I was just sick of it, and I was like, Mom, I gotta come home. I confessed everything to my mom. And from that point, from that day, February 17th, I've decided that my life is not gonna be a genetic, self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm not gonna let myself be predetermined. I'm not gonna take the bricks that were laid out for me from the evil and the hatred and the confusion of my forefathers. I'm gonna forge a new path of positivity. I wanna be a social worker. And I wanna help people, and I wanna use my story to connect with people and share love and hopefully instill a level of hope for the future. And like, they might be stepping up to that windowsill, but they don't have to take that step. They just have to find in their heart what's holding them back. And that's really what I was able to find through, grieving with my dad, grieving the death of my dad. And I kind of realized, although it really did feel like my life was kind of laid out for me, I was supposed to become an alcoholic. There's a statistic that says the son or daughter of an alcoholic, the first time they take a sip of alcohol, they are 6 times more likely to become an alcoholic at that point. I was like, that's not me. That's not going to be me. And so from that day forth, my life is going to be a beacon of hope, positivity, and I'm going to connect with people